All right, traders. Hey, this is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group with your end of day recap for Thursday. So, a lot of things to go over today. A lot of movers. Again, it was felt like it was one of those days to kind of keep your head on a swivel because there were so many different groups that were kind of moving around in a flat market. But let me start briefly with the major indices, which again, it just seems like it's rather dull. Compared to individual stocks and sectors. Even if you're just looking at sectors, there's enough edge in just what's going on in the sectors. If you're not that comfortable playing single stocks, but we've talked about this before. In yesterday's video, how whenever we're bid up pre-market, it seems like that's the high print of the day. Today, and I'll just kind of zoom in here. It was same thing, but we weren't really bid up pre-market. But again, if you're kind of patient in the first hour, this has been again the pattern that we've been seeing when we're not bid up pre-market. When we're bid up, it's been like a kind of a collapse most of the days. But this one, we were basically flat going into the day. We caught that volatility around the tax plan that was unveiled, or the plan. Again, I think there was a lot of big moves today, but keep in mind it's a plan. These things are not set in stone. And considering that Obamacare was not even repealed, which was an easier hurdle than trying to pass a tax plan, I think some of these reactions today were a little bit too much. So so this is basically what we did, from around 10 o'clock in the morning when some of those headlines rolled out about, what's going to be affected. I think one of the biggest ones was mortgage interest for houses that are over $500,000, which I'm not sure if it's houses or loans that are over 500,000. I have to check that. But if it's properties over 500,000, you're really not going to find. I live in, I'm from New Jersey, work in New York, and anything around the tri-state area here on the East Coast, you're really not going to find anything under $500,000 unless you're really far outside of the city or it's a tiny, tiny little place. But so that really affects properties, and I think Toll Brothers saw some action. Toll Brothers is a luxury home builder. I think people kind of stopped and said, "Hey, wait a minute, this isn't going to be that bad." Although Toll Brothers kind of finished on the lows, so the whole group really got smacked. The whole home building group, ITB, which by the way was extremely overbought. For the last couple weeks, we were just talking about this I believe yesterday. This group has been on a just a really really nice run. So big red bar there, a lot of volume in this ETF. So regardless of if this is actually coming into effect, probably worthy of a pullback considering how overbought. Again, the sectors, S&P sectors or subsectors of the S&P, they usually don't stay overbought like this on the RSI. It's usually maybe like a couple days and then they kind of come off. So this is really unusual to see something like that. So we'll have to see how this shakes out. But 38.76 would be your support. I looked at things like Home Depot that was getting smoked. Oops, that's not the right symbol. User error. Home Depot did come off the lows pretty nicely. We talked about that in the trading room. You start to look for things that really shouldn't be that impactful. Like, really, is Depot really going to get impacted by this? Probably not. It's probably a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion. So it did come off the lows pretty nicely. It was around like 160 and a half, closed a couple dollars higher than that. Still not a full recovery, but about halfway there. So that was the biggest moves. Also, the private equity names were a casualty, like Blackstone, but they actually came back here. I was thinking about buying the dip in KKR. I did not do it. Looks like KKR came back as well, very nicely as well. So again, overreactions all over the place, I think, anyway. You have to kind of sit and think about, again, if this tax plan is actually going to be passed. It's just a plan right now. All right, so that's some of the casualties, but really where it got interesting today was in a couple different groups. So XBI, the biotechs, while the Qs were kind of selling off, the biotechs were holding pretty strong. So they actually closed here above value. I actually have a little trend line drawn here, which isn't perfect. Extend to the right. Why do I have this drawn? Because every time the last couple days we've tried to really rebound, it's been squashed. So we're hanging around that downward trend line. Let's see if we could pop out tomorrow. If you remember, this was last Friday, which had a nice rebound from a bunch of days, a bunch of red days, right? So I think this is pretty. So far, I'll leave this trend line in here until we can get above it. I would also say 84.40, which is going to be, yeah, which is the November value area. I can't, I'm sorry, I forgot that we were in November there for a second, but we've got a new value area for November. 84.40 is the level that you want to watch. You know, if you're kind of sitting and being patient and waiting for a little bit of confirmation in biotech, 84.40 is the level that you would want to get back involved in this group. All right, so that had some nice strength to it. And then the other name, the other group, which frustrates me because there's no options in ITA. I was actually, I was chatting with the Bloomberg rep over at, or the Bloomberg specialist who specializes in ETFs. And I said to him, I asked, I said, why don't the ETF providers split these sectors, split these ETFs, have a stock split like a 3-for-1 stock split, because there's no options on ITA, which is a really great way to play, in my opinion, the aerospace and defense ETF, because you got everything in there. This way you don't have to pick one name. So I would have went long. I noticed this when it was just up about 1% today, and it went ahead and continued and was up 1.76% today. So real nice. Couple of things to note here. Look at the volume. Look at the volume today in ITA. So that's pretty darn good. And this ETF will catch a lot of volume. This has had big inflows this year. Let me see if I could just bring this up for you, if I could do it here in about 10 seconds. But so I started to look for different names because I can't play that in options, and I think it's a little bit too expensive. So I actually put on Raytheon. I was looking at Raytheon, and I was looking at LMT, which have both reported earnings, so you don't have to worry about that anymore because we're still seeing just a ton of volume that is being tied to a lot of different names, which makes it very noisy and very cloudy to figure out if whether or not you want to go into some of these names, which a lot of them are just hedges.
Starbucks 4Q earnings conference call gets underway.
All right, so let me go ahead and bring this in, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. All the inflows into this ETF, those are all the green. If you go back a little bit further, look at a 5-year chart. Look at all the inflows that this ETF. Now, this ETF, defense names have been one of the best performers year over year. But look at the volume since the election, and look at all the inflows. Now they started to see a little bit of profit taking in here, and you could see that we'll go back to the 1-year chart. A little bit of profit taking here, and we paused. And then just to kind of zoom in the last month, it's been consolidating, right? So I looked at LMT, which is back over the 50-day moving average. Again, it needs to get inside the value area, which I think it just did close there. And I went into RTN, which also right at the 50-day moving average. So it's got a little bit of work to do, but I think this is a good name to buy on a dip. Again, it needs to get over that purple line and into the value area, which is about 180, 186. So I put a long swing on in that trade. A couple other trades that we put on, really nice. So let me talk about CSX for a minute. CSX, I've had a swing trade on, probably not the best timing on it. I thought one day we were going to break higher. We didn't get it. Whenever I start a swing trade, it's usually a third of a position because sometimes you just don't pick the right day to go in. So I've been sitting with this swing trade, and I added to it today because it was on the 200-day moving average, and I actually got in front of the call buying in this. So obviously I'm not the only one who's looking at the 200-day moving average as a place to go long. Somebody else did too. They purchased the November 24 calls. I put this trade on in the morning. They put it on 15:30. There was also put selling that I noticed too, somewhere in here. I guess it was weekly put selling. I thought it was a little bit further out. But that was in the morning for CSX. So really nice move. The other name, let me just talk about, I put on CME once this Bitcoin headline came out that they're going to have Bitcoin futures and the CME is going to list them. So up 3%. It actually didn't do much yesterday. It was actually ended down on the day. In hindsight, I probably should have added to the trade, but I put this on 2 days ago once that announcement was made, and I was kind of sitting dumbfounded yesterday saying, really? They're listing Bitcoin futures, which are going to be huge, and the stock's not going up? So
CBS says they have
this is
lost
the
no
reaction that we got
advertisers
today. And
for its
ICE, which was
NFL
another name
broadcasts.
that performed really well, that was a trade that we put on last week. Talked about that name last week while I was out on vacation. But that was like one of the one trades I put on, I think, on Thursday of last week. So full disclosure, I took the majority of it off yesterday because I didn't want to hold it into earnings, but I think a lot of members held on to it and crushed it today in that name. Other names, so names that saw some option activity. Sorry, I don't have this completely filled out for the day because it was a busy day. This morning really didn't see that much option, so that great option activity. But there was a couple names that were really interesting. JD, they came in a couple times. JD reports. I actually put on a trade idea. I'm not going to talk about it in this video because it's for members, but I put on a trade idea for leading up into their earnings report in a couple weeks. A lot of consolidation there on the 200-day moving average. So trade in place for that one. We saw some more take two weekly calls, which I think were for possibly for ATVI. Trivago was a name, TRVG, a name that I've never traded before, so I did not trade this name today. But big move, I guess, in a downtrend too. Was up 17% today. They came in several times, like all throughout the day, in this name. Jan 10 calls. This was an hour before the close, but they started at like 9:40 in the morning for this one, which we caught. I flagged it. I didn't trade it, but talked about it. A couple other names that we saw later on. Sorry, it's escaping me because it's been a long day. We did see a little bit of call buying in BAC today. But I think the chart again another interesting looking chart. A little bit of consolidation here, almost like a flag, and trying to resolve itself to the upside. All right, so I'll end it there. There's a lot of other things to talk about, but I think I don't like to keep these videos going much past 10 minutes. So we'll talk more pre-market. Some good name. One name that I played for earnings was Arista Networks. Big down day today. I'm not sure what that was all about. So we took advantage of it by going long, and the stock's up from to 190 from the close of 181. So looking good on that one. Apple, which I did not play, their numbers were great across the board. So now, granted, the implied move they were expecting about a 4.5% move for Apple, which gets you up to about 175. So an earnings play for Apple would have been a little bit tough. If you own stock, congratulations, but an earnings play would have been tough for it to work, considering that the heightened implied volatility going into earnings. All right, so that's it for tonight's video. Have a great night. See you Friday morning in the trading room. Thanks.